Hey, what's going on, y'all? It's your girl, Nati Fabs, and I'm really excited about this interview today. I am the founder of the Handy Consultant and curator of Nati Journey. Um, I'm here with John C. Williams. How you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank
That's
you for
cool.
having me.
That's cool. I'm really excited again about this interview here. I had the honor of connecting with, I believe, a couple of your mentees. He said his name was FNM Mook and
Hmm.
Rick. And they were both really, really cool, dope creatives and entrepreneurs, and that's truly a passion of mine, entrepreneurship. But in my research and in my prep, I wanted to just kind of ask them. I was like, "So who's John? How do you know John?" And he's like, "Listen, everybody knows John." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" So I want to get to know a little bit more about who you are, and so like if you could just kind of think about, it could be a word, phrase, or paragraph. Don't even
Hmm.
matter. Like, who is John C. Williams?
Oh, shoosh. That's in a word, probably complex.
Mm.
I would
Mm.
say complex.
Listen, that's a synonym of Nazi, just so you know. That's Knotty. But no, I understand that. I get
Hmm.
that. I get. Why do you say that?
I don't think that a lot of people fully understand me
Mm.
and understand my motivations and my
Mm.
intentions for things.
Mm.
Um, and when you start to move up in leadership and in position, you start to do things that are different that people don't understand because they can't see from your viewpoint.
Mm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. I really want to get into like so before we touch on a bunch of the other things that you're like going into and moving into as speaking on leadership. I
Hmm.
really want to talk a little bit about like the programs that you started, particularly focusing on like mentorship and things of that nature. Because I would imagine it's probably been like governing a lot of your work and
Hmm.
your ambitions and things like that. So talk to me a little bit about the programs that you started.
Um, Mentoring has become something that it took a life of its own.
Mm.
Really, um, it was something that I felt that I needed and I wanted to provide
Mm.
because I made a lot of mistakes when I was young.
Mm.
I dealt with a lot of trauma from growing up, and in dealing with that, I made mistakes that sent me to prison. And in doing so, I learned a lot about my history, my culture,
Mm.
and understood that there was a different path,
Mm.
right? And that a lot of our young people can take a different path too, and they're taking the same path that I took.
Mm.
And so I wanted to create something to where I could give back so that others didn't have to follow that path,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's been my life's purpose.
Yeah.
It gets difficult at times because I have to open up all of my wounds, you know
Mm.
what I mean, to
Mhm.
help others. But it's worth it. It's so worth it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say has been like the most pivotal aspect of this work that you're doing, either in other folks' lives or even in
Hmm.
your own life? Because I feel like in conversation, one thing that you mentioned was just how important these relationships are to you,
Hmm.
not just like then, but like continuously,
Hmm.
right? So I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that.
Um, One thing that always gets me every single time is when one of my mentees has a child.
Mm.
I feel like an uncle or
Mm.
godfather.
Mm.
So that always strikes me. But there are two pivotal things. My first, when we started a street outreach in Brockton,
Mm.
our first, person came. A father walked in
Wow.
and he said, "Listen, I'm going to jail in 2 weeks. I need for somebody to take care of my son. My wife has multiple, we have multiple sons.
Mm.
This is my oldest. He's already starting to get in trouble. I can see with me not being here, he's going to go down the wrong path, and I need somebody to look over him."
Wow.
And it was me and my partner at the time, Joey Gomes,
Mm-hmm.
and we took on that assignment. But it always reminded me back to why I started doing this. A lot of people don't know that mentor, the word itself, comes from a name,
Mm.
right? And back in the wars, there was a Greek king, and he had a son, and he was going off to war.
Mm.
And he said, "Listen, I'm gonna be gone for who knows how long. I need somebody to raise my son as a king. And so he had a friend, his right-hand man's name was Mentor.
Stop playing.
And he said, listen, I want you to raise my son to be a king.
Yeah.
And he did, and that's where Mentor comes from. And so I always took it that serious. And so when I went into street outreach, and that was my first like case, it was like, damn, this is real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I'm still, you know, I'm still in that young man's life today. You
Wow.
know, I'm still friends with his father. And he had four or five little brothers that went through, you know, our program or other programs connected to us too. So
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. Something that's really coming up for me as I'm thinking about this, like the youth that you're working with, there are a lot of defining moments in their earlier years that end up really shifting or even determining what their future is going to look like, right? So for you, what would you say is probably one identifiable moment that you can think of, like you can highlight any moment that really defined your path moving forward, and even continuing to move into your future?
One thing that will always be have a stark significance in my life is the day I came home from state prison. The day I came home from state prison, you know, because you leave everything in there. So I got on, you know, state grays and some bolos.
Did you have shoelaces on?
No. So they don't get shoelaces in there. So I was walking up the street, and it's my neighborhood, and I'm walking up the street. I get to my house. My father wasn't home, so I went across the street to the store. And I saw one of my young boys that I knew, and he was older, and he's telling me all these stories about back in the day. Oh, remember you used to give us rides, you used to do this and do that. And I'm like, man, you remembering me for the wrong things, man. I was like, look, you don't remember me telling you stay in school, stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I do, but... And I said to myself, in that walk home, if I can make that much of a difference in a negative way, I can make that much of a difference in a positive way.
Right.
And that was something that really defined, you know, my next steps moving forward.
Yeah. And, you know, I appreciate that, because one thing that's sticking out to me, once again, is that for you as an individual, having influence on somebody in their life and some of the things that they're encountering, like how they said, like, hey, I remember this, I remember that, and you're like, you remember me for the wrong things, right? And now you're making a major impact shifting it and like really shifting the trajectory entirely in terms of like positive impact and things, and you're one individual, right? So in my opinion, one individual can be powerful, but a community can be even stronger. So how can we actually expand our reach when we're thinking about, like, you know, more folks, more role models, so that the youth can really see more folks, more adults, really making a change?
That's the goal of the whole program. Because we went, at first we started at a high school level, and within 3 years we went from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Wow.
And that's the goal, to home grow our mentors, right?
Yeah.
And so in mentoring a lot of people in the city, a lot of specifically young men, specifically young black men, the goal is for them to mentor somebody else, for them to take that example of having somebody in their life, realizing the importance of that and passing it on to somebody else, right? And we grew a good team of mentors in our city. And I feel like we have a lot of young people that came out of our program that do feel that obligation to give back. And so in, you know, the next steps that we're taking, we're looking to make this a citywide thing, to where we are taking that mentoring seriously, because to me it's all about human connection.
For sure.
Right? And when we make that human connection, that's when it almost organically starts to pass on. Right? And you build a different culture.
Yeah. What would you imagine are going to be some of the hurdles or obstacles that you're going to have to come up against in order for you to kind of dismantle that, to make that happen?
Well, first and foremost, there are a lot of people profiting off the status quo, right? So there are a lot of people that are making money right now, and it's profitable for them. And even though there are a lot of people suffering and being oppressed because of it, they're used to it, right? And we're, as human beings, conditioning is real.
Right.
And so even though we're in a bad state, we're just so conditioned to be there. We're like, I don't know if I want to change it up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So really inspiring people and empowering people to understand how much power they have and hold with their vote,
Yeah.
right? That's going to be the real challenge.
Yeah, and inspiring people and motivating people also means like shifting mindsets and things of that nature. In order for that to even happen, what are like some of the considerations that you like the top 3 considerations when you're thinking about shifting someone's mindset, particularly Black men? Because it's clear that's the group that you've been working with. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about that.
It's crazy because I just did a podcast, and one of the guys on the podcast was really saying like, well, what makes you think you can change anything? Because we ain't never seen no change. We've never seen anything come that was going to change anything. So changing the mindset of our people can only come from them seeing you create change. And that's one thing I feel like in Brockton. They've seen me create change throughout the years, throughout the last 15 years. They've seen me on a daily basis create change in their children's lives. And that's one thing that's universal to people.
Yeah.
Whether you're rich, poor, white, Black, whatever, you care about your children.
Yeah.
And you care about where they're going, because no matter what, whether you like this next generation or not, they are going to inherit our city and our society. And so it's imperative that we raise them and educate them in proper ways.
Yeah.
And I think people have realized enough, to know that that's paramount in any society, that and taking care of your elders. And it's been translating in the message since we've been started this campaign, and I hope that it continues to.
Yeah. I love that you bring up elders. Like, to me, that's a huge thing. I'm a huge advocate of like the connection between elders as guides and like youth. Oftentimes we don't necessarily listen to youth as elders as well, which I think is also like the tension that can also exist, in my opinion. But when we're thinking about elders and like the systemic implications, the historical implications that exist around our guides, how is it that they can properly guide youth if they themselves are not necessarily inside of a position to do that because they're not equipped with the right strategies and tools? How are we shifting that?
We need to bridge the gaps. Us as what I call tweeners, right? We have to give credit to our elders. We have to give our elders their flowers now. And that's why I'm consistently, shouting out the people who had an impact on my life, the Muhammad Ali's, the Maya Angelou's, and the more that we show reverence, right, we start to model to our young people. I'll give you a quick example. Muhammad Ali is somebody that, oh my God, he's been such an influence on my life.
For sure.
And I didn't realize how much until he died. And when he died, I was working construction at the time, and I was driving home. I heard the news, and I'm like, man, I get home, and I tell my son, and my son immediately, at the time my son was 5 years old, and he immediately broke down and cried, and like bawling, and I'm like, man, he took that harder than me. And I didn't realize because I held such a reverence for him. My son did. And we ended up, taking that moment. We drove down to Louisville, Kentucky together. And we went to Muhammad Ali's memorial. We ended up, when we got down there, we ended up getting tickets and ended up inside the memorial. And that's always with my son. That's his greatest memory.
For sure.
Is that road trip. But it's us that we have to pass the torch. We have to continue the traditions. And I feel like, especially in our communities, we haven't done such a good job in doing that.
No, I completely agree. I really, really do. And I think a lot of that is because there are a lot of different things that are plaguing the community at this point, including like mental health. And in my opinion, that's one thing that we would need to continuously work on. We've shied away from it for a long time, ignored it for a long time, or threw it under the bus for a grip. But now it's like, in what ways can we actually begin to shift our approach to mental health? And we can start there.
We have to really start to look at the state that our communities are in, our community is in, right? We're quick to jump on everyone else's movement, right? But we never stick with ours. Even more than gun violence in our community, mental health is an issue. You deal with mental health, I guarantee you reduce gun violence, right? It's not healthy to kill each other in the numbers that we do, right? And we know the condition that we came out of, you know, with, and people just say slavery has been so long, but it's not only slavery. You know, you got, you know, we had a period of Reconstruction that was followed by Jim Crow. And you have to ask yourself, how did we go from Reconstruction to Jim Crow? But that's a whole nother interview. Yeah. You know, as we come down to where we are as a people now, we have, and I think we're doing a good job in realizing that we have some issues we need to deal with. It didn't make our parents bad parents, but our parents raised us in ways that they had traditions passed down from slavery, right? And so we have to recondition ourselves and recognize that we only got what they got. So we have to change some of the strategies that we use as parents, some of the strategies that we use as people, you know, to change our personalities and the way we engage in the world.
Yeah, no, I hear that. All right, well, I want to talk a little bit about Brockton, right? And the work that you have been doing, that you're looking to do, hoping to do. But first, I guess, why is it that you're interested in running for mayor of Brockton? It's deep.
It is, because, you know, I'm not a career politician. I'm not really politically inclined too much, but I do realize that in order to make the changes in our community that we need to make, you know, people that are in the know and people that have the ability to do so need to step up and fulfill their obligation to their community. I think we're at a time where, specifically in changing the leadership, we can institute policies, and if we really start redirecting where some of the resources are going, we can change our community and become very progressive, because things are switching quickly now. Technology has advanced things so fast that if you're not progressive minded as a city and as a leader, you're gonna regress. You're regressing. There is no stagnation right now. You're either progressing or you're regressing. And right now I can see our city regressing, right? And so we need a change of the guard. We need younger people in. We need people who are more connected with what society is about now. We need more leadership that will collaborate with young influencers, right? Content creators, digital creators, young entrepreneurs, right? Because we have these in rapid rates, and that's where the future is going, right? And so if you invest in them now, you get a good return on investment, because it's low investment, but they have the potential to have a huge return, because the more people that are successful in those areas, the more that they can teach, right? And in Brockton, we have a wealth of talent. We have a number of influencers right now and content creators that our city should be in touch with. We have young entrepreneurs. We have a young man that just started a gaming lounge on the west side, right? And one thing of mine, people know, you know, esports is my thing. And my goal is to create a citywide esports academy, so that we can train young people to go out there and compete at the highest levels, because that's profitable for them as individuals and profitable for the city, right? And as much as people represent the city should represent the people.
Yeah.
We have young videographers and film people, you know, Newbie Productions, Rui with Anawan Films, Tim Young with McGriff Films. We have young clothing designers, Stephen Rainboyne with Us Over Them Clothing, which is really connected to young people right now. Brandon Gomes with Neutral Clothing. You have all of these young people. I mean, and these are all, you know, under 30 and under, you know, that are making moves who have stepped up in the city. I really want to shout out, you know, Ian Woods, who has not only started businesses but has begun the process at a young age to pass that information on to other young people. He should be given a space and he should be given resources to do that on a regular basis, because that's how you grow community.
For sure,
right?
For sure. Yeah. I see that sometimes, like when I'm thinking about entrepreneurship, and that's the reason why I kind of started this movement of collaboration over competition, likely because in the entrepreneurial space, in the creative space, there tends to be this need to be competitive, right? Because there might be a lack of or limited resources, right? And so, like, I love the fact that you're bringing up. Can you say the gentleman's name again?
Which one?
The one that you would like to kind of invest in so that he can continue to share resources with other youth.
I just mentioned a lot of names. Ian Woods.
Yeah, Ian Woods. Okay, cool. So like doing that type of work, how is it that we can continue to expand that and increase the reach for other folks, not even just from Ian Woods, but also among other entrepreneurs and other creators as well? Is there space to do that in Brockton? Have there been opportunities to do that in Brockton? Or is there vision for that?
And there actually is.
Yeah.
And I've been in contact with a lot of those people. I want to give a quick shout out to Mark and Mike Slade, who Mark started The Rant, which is a podcast that is strictly focused on mental health, right? And they've collabed with a couple other podcasts, Diamond Throne podcast. Let me shout out Diamond Throne, PZ, XL, my guy, that group, Fly Nice. Those guys are collaborating because they were all connected through hip hop, you know, and now they started podcasts. And definitely shout out to DJ EA Sports, because he's been somebody in Massachusetts and really in New England that has had that collaborative mindset and has really looked to pull people together. So there are people in those spaces. There are young people who are collaborating. I like the Van Buren boys. I see them all the time, and C4, Julio Rivera, those young people, they have such a collaborative spirit.
I like it.
Now, if the city doesn't even have to do anything except say, you know what, we have the resources, let's put you guys together.
Definitely.
And now we've developed co-ops.
Definitely. How is this showing up in schools, if at all? Is there opportunity for schools to be able to give space to creatives and entrepreneurs so that they're able to gain the knowledge and intellect to also develop their skills inside of those spaces as well?
Not enough. We had started to develop those spaces. The school system opened its doors to me 10 years ago when I came in, and we developed, you know, a lot of programs and structures to pull people together and collaborate, but through politics and mostly politics.
Yeah.
Those structures we built have been broken down, you know, or diluted. And there is space in the schools. I want to continue to pilot and show throughout the country. That is the place to begin to change the culture of communities. Every child in your community just about goes through there, right? So you can affect them at the earliest of stages. right?
Yeah.
So that's where you can really start to change things. And that's the point where everyone cares.
Yeah.
I care about my kids just like everybody else care about theirs.
For sure. For sure. I appreciate you naming that. In a recent art, I think it was recent, or an article just in general in the Enterprise, you said, you referenced the essence of Brockton is at stake. What is the essence?
Brockton has a certain spirit. Like, it's not just because
Did y'all see that though? Like, I don't know. I saw a shift in energy there. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, if you're from Brockton, you know it. Like, you just feel it. Like, it's just that I don't know. It's that Brockton attitude and Brockton pride, right? And it's just a special place. And not just because I grew up there, but, you know, if you go to New York City, right, you'll have diversity. But you'll have, like, Chinatown, Little Italy. In just about every city, you'll get that.
Yeah.
Not in Brockton. Your neighbor is going to be Vietnamese, Italian, you know, Lithuanian, Cape Verdean, Haitian, Guatemalan. Like, you're going to have that in your neighborhood, like right there up on you, right? And so the structures growing up and continue to be, you know, racist, but not the people. You know what I mean? The people, you don't have room to be racist, right? Racism is broken down through education, right? The more I know you, the more I talk to you and understand you, the more I'm going to understand we're both human beings. We both care about the same things, just about, right? But in Brockton, you have to experience different cultures. You have to experience different people, so you don't have room to be racist. You know what I mean? You can, but at this point, it's your choice. You know,
you have everything in front of you to figure out how to make a shift in that space. No, I understand that. Speaking of education, speaking of teachers, I see that there's like a massive decline or layoff in the Brockton city. I'm curious to know, like, what has been that impact? What has been your response to that? Or at least what's come up for you when hearing that? And another thing that sticks out to me is that there was, you know, the Brockton School Committee, there's like an anticipation that would be 23% BIPOC or educators of color, and 10% of which would be about white educators. And so I'm curious to know what you think the impact might be. What's your immediate response, or what comes up for you?
My immediate response is that a lot of things that we built up over the last decade in the school system is going to be broken down. The immediate emotion is anger, because I don't know how many people know, but 2 years ago, well, longer than 2 years ago, it took until 2 years ago to get the money, but America said, you know what, we messed up. We disenfranchised black people from their education. We made it illegal for them to be able to read. We should do something about it. And so America did what America does, and they threw money at it. And they said, here's some money. That coincided with a pandemic. And so returning to schools, they had ARP and ESSER money, which is a whole bunch of letters, but basically to reopen the schools safely, they got money. So you combine all that money, Brockton got over $50 million.
Wow.
And now, prior to that, Brockton had been fighting deficits year after year, laying off hundreds of teachers and bringing some back every single year. And so before the last before fiscal budget 22, I said, look, this money's coming in. They're already starting to misspend it. We need to get conscious of what's going on. We need to get involved with the process. and we probably should change the mayor because we have to make sure that this money gets spent the right way. I mean,
Right.
as Kerry Rodriguez, the president of the National Parents Union, said, it was the equivalent of the schools hitting the megabucks.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm.
And they just wasted all that money. We ended up, the school superintendent says all the time, I hired 400 and something people, you know, and if you think about that, you hire 400 and something people, just give an average of $30,000
Mm-hmm.
a year, right?
Wow.
And you see how much was wasted there.
Yeah.
And he says he puts people first, but if you put people first, you think long term,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they bought a bunch of buses and started a transportation department. And it's like, okay, well, that was short-term money, so how are you going to maintain this transportation department?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they started a Boxer Tough program, which was to get our homegrown sports program reinvigorated,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What about teachers?
Mm.
What about students?
Yeah.
They will blame it on the lack of enrollment, but that's been happening for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that was happening,
Right.
right? If another thing was because let me explain the Student Opportunity Act and what the money came in for. It was to close the achievement gap between black and white students, right? And with that, one thing that the schools implemented, and this to me is the most egregious thing, the schools implemented general ed pre-K, which we didn't have in Brockton before. So now we have a pre-K class, at least one pre-K class in every single elementary school.
Wow.
And so of course that's going to address early literacy,
Right.
all of that.
Right.
That was one of the things that they took out.
Whoa.
So what our school system is saying is that having a transportation department, having a sports program,
Mm-hmm.
having 7 assistant superintendents,
Mm.
those things are more important than the education of our children. And let me make it clear, when I say we went from having 1 assistant superintendent to having none to having 7, that is solely a money grab.
Yeah.
Because you've created these assistant superintendent positions.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't hit the fiscal cliff of this money yet, which is 2024. Once you hit that fiscal cliff, we can't maintain those salaries anymore.
Mm.
And when that happens, those people will retire with an assistant superintendent's pension and we'll be paying them out for the rest of their life.
Wow. Long term.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so we've taken all this money that should have went towards students,
Right.
and we just distributed to adults until it was gone. And now we're saying, oh, we don't know what happened.
Right.
There has to be accountability for that.
Yeah.
That's directly on the superintendent and the mayor of the city.
Definitely.
Period.
Yeah. I like it, the fact that you've been focusing. I feel like in conversations just in general, on and off camera, accountability has been, a key word as well as transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? Why are those so important to you?
Because I come from trauma and I come from the streets. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that I was always taught, to be accountable for your actions. You know what I mean? And play space face up. You know what I mean? Show your palms up when you're with your peoples. And that doesn't happen in this realm. It's crazy because I talk to a lot of my peoples and they're like, man, you're in this realm. I'm like, boy, this is worse than the streets, man. At least in the streets, you can keep it 100 with somebody.
Right.
Here
Right.
you can't.
Right.
And there's a total lack of accountability. And when it comes to black people, we are always held accountable to ours. Like even now, while I'm running, people, the first thing they bring up is my record.
Mm.
Okay, well, I was held accountable to that.
Right. Right.
I went, oh, they say I did prison time. I did.
Mm.
That was the consequences that our state, our judicial system said that I had to pay for the actions I committed. And I paid that. So I should be at even with everybody else.
Right.
And I feel that that's something that I want to pilot in our city, is to really open up doors for returning citizens. Because we have so much more to offer to our community.
Definitely.
You know, and we've paid our price, so we should be on even now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I've stepped up and said, look, if you look at my record, if you have anybody that can read a Corey, my record on anything that I've done, I've pled guilty to. I didn't waste the taxpayers' dollars. I didn't waste anybody's time. I did that, and I took my penalty. Anything else, anything I haven't pled guilty to that I went to trial to, I beat. It was either dismissed or I was found not guilty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the type of accountability we should ask for, we should demand from our leaders.
Yeah.
That you step up. When you do something wrong, you step up and say, I did something wrong, and you accept your consequence.
Definitely.
That's not what's happening here. They spent a bunch of money and they saying, I don't know what happened. No, you do.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to have accountability or we'll never progress.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I like the idea of pushing forward honesty. And I feel like that might be one of the pillars of your program. Maybe I'm wrong or anything like that.
That's the first principle.
Yeah, talk to me about the principles. Talk to me about these pillars.
We have 4 principles: honesty, loyalty, honor, and respect, in that order. And honesty is first, because without honesty, we have nothing real. We don't have a real connection.
Right.
And so when we hear people say, I keep it 100, I keep it 100, that means you're honest. If you say you keep it 100, then that means you're an honest
100%
person.
real.
And so we always equate keeping it 100 with like being this tough, violent person or something. It's like, no, keeping it 100 means you're an honest person.
Right.
Because that means if we have this interview and everything I said in this interview is a lie, you haven't built any real relationship with me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's what I teach my mentees. And those principles are threefold. It starts with that which you see is greater than you. Right? So if you believe in God, you know, if you only see your parents, if you don't see anything greater than you in this world, then that's a whole nother discussion that you need to have.
Yeah.
But then if you can't be honest with that which you think is greater than you, you can't be honest with yourself. And if I can't be honest with myself, how am I going to be honest with you?
Right.
And so it goes through that cycle with honesty, loyalty, because first you got to be loyal to that which you see is greater than you, your purpose, your God. You got to be 100 with that before you can be 100 with yourself. But with loyalty, people always affiliate loyalty with that something outside of themselves.
Right.
I gotta be loyal to my homeboys.
Yeah.
No, not first. You gotta be loyal to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You gotta be loyal to your purpose. Right? If you can't see that, you're gonna make those mistakes on the road of life. Right? And then when you're honest and you're loyal, that automatically brings about the disposition of honor. Right? Because I tell my kids, listen, the only thing that I want when I'm dead and gone is for people to say, you know what, I'm glad he lived. I'm glad he lived. I'm glad he was a part of my life and I got to be a part of his. You know what I mean? And that's honor. And then respect. Respect, if you look at the word itself, re being a prefix to do again, spec being a look at, right? And so it's to look at something again, right? And so you respect all of the prior principles. But with respect, how I break it down to the youth is this. If I look like your uncle that smacked you in the back of the head when you were 4, right? Once you walk into the room, you're gonna look at me a certain way, like I don't like this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But to show me respect is that feel that out,
Yeah.
and then look at me again. How do I approach you? You know what I mean? How do I treat you? You know what I mean? And we all, through our experiences, are gonna have those preconceived notions of things and have our way of thinking. But we have to respect everything and look at it for the way that we see it, and then look at it for the way that it really is.
Yeah, yeah. These principles kind of remind me of like what's necessary in order to heal self and ultimately heal community. And so I think that's like really, really intriguing and super exciting, specifically as you are moving into this space as a mayoral candidate. And knowing that those are the pillars, do those pillars still continue into the work that you're doing potentially as a mayor or as a candidate in this campaign?
Absolutely. They came from, those were my principles for life. You know what I mean? That I just passed on because I passed that to my kids. And I pass it on to my mentees. My whole program was derived from the character building that I did within myself and the way that I treat my kids and raise my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel that's the only blueprint that would make sense to me.
Yeah.
To treat other people's children like you treated yourself and how you treat your children. You know what I mean? If that's not the standard, then you're just playing around and experimenting with people.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate you naming that. I really do. This has been truly, honestly, I wish we can continue to have this over and over. I would love for you to be able to grab whatever hat is most intriguing to you. Pick a color, any color.
It's been really, really tough because like black and red are my colors.
Yeah.
So I've been going back and forth, but I think I gotta go with the black.
You can get black as neutral. You can go black. It's like for anything. Period.
I can
Point
wear
blank.
this with anything. So I really, first of all, did you create these?
I did. Yeah, that's right.
I wanna for those that can't see these, man, collaboration over competition. I mean, that's a mindset in itself.
It is a mindset.
You know what I mean?
It is a mindset.
That's something, honestly, going into becoming a mayor, that has to be the mindset.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For
because beyond the election, beyond whatever happens in the election, we will win. Beyond that, it becomes a collaboration of how do we pick up the pieces and make this work.
Absolutely. Collaboration is truly one of those healing aspects to the self as well as the community. Without being able to do that, if we are constantly operating from a competitive mindset, it becomes really difficult for us to be able to operate within a communal space. And how are we going to do any work, right, if it's not actually us coming together and making a difference together? Otherwise, we're just going to continue in this like cycle that's just like not working, right? But anyway, if there's something that you can go ahead and leave with the people, feel free to go ahead and drop that ahora.
Listen, people of Brockton, we got a choice to make this year. We see what's going on. Pay attention. You see the things that don't make sense. You see the things that can't be explained. And you know there's something wrong there. We have the opportunity to retake control of our community. There are some positive things going on in our city, some development going on downtown, some businesses that are really expanding and creating new cultures here in Brockton, specifically, Brockton Beer Company and a lot of downtown businesses. But we want to be here to enjoy that community that's being built. We want to enjoy the police having a new public safety building. We do want to look into some of those contracts and building that. But we want to benefit from these luxury lofts coming into town. If you look at what's really going on, they're trying to price us out. There have been families that have been in Brockton for a long time. They're allowing our schools to decline. They're allowing our children to become gang involved. They're allowing violence to run rampant without any response other than hire more police. Our schools aren't safe at all. We've had 2 stabbings in 2 months. So they want you to leave. They want you to get out. It's time for us to say we're not going anywhere. We have too much Brockton boxer pride to let anyone force us out. So let's make a decision with our vote. September 17th, November 7th. John C. Williams for mayor. Peace.
Yes, sir. So that was another take, y'all, with Nazi Fabs. If y'all are looking to pick a color, you can find that on thehandyconsultant.com/merch. I'm excited. All right, y'all. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Yeah, this is good. This is really good. This is really
All
good.
right.
Yeah.
Photo.